These videos are getting progressively more and more intense for me and more challenging to share. I don't necessarily mind sharing. It's just being in the maelstrom, the vortex. In another round where I'm sort of just like loosely holding back tears, and that's been the order of the day. That's been how it's been going. I spent 15 years on this path. Any point in time, I would have told you I felt like I was pretty okay. A few years back, I would have told you I felt like I had a pretty good handle on things. And we find, if I found, I don't know anything about we, I found there was something really powerful about wanting to see this journey all the way to the end. And when I made a small prayer in a prison cell that I said I wanted the whole thing, the full Monty, after having experienced Kensho, something listened, something paid attention. And as this shadow thing progressed, this uncovering of the inner child, this feeling into deep wounds, every time I would feel through one, it would feel a little bit easier. And also I would feel like, okay, I'm pretty much settled. And then the last few months, I've found myself in situations, and more precisely relationships, that unlock stuff that I don't think I would have ever touched. And I thought I kind of had it all figured out. I really did. And it's becoming very clear to me that there are certain situations and there are certain environments and certain people, certain things that get brought into our life that are there to get into some of the deeper stuff. And this one's been challenging. I don't really know much about psychology, but the last few months I've dug into it because I was desperately looking for some kind of model to understand what was happening to me. Feeling relatively calm and then finding myself engaged in a situation that had me completely losing my mind. And I was just startled. Where's all this coming from? I didn't know I had this stuff in there. This stuff was laying dormant. And I suspect that this stuff can lay dormant for a lot of us until the right setting comes along and until we're ready. And for me, it's felt like dying over and over and over again. There was and has been fear of abandonment that I picked up from childhood. And the relationship itself is not necessarily good or bad. Ultimately speaking, had some wonderful moments. And something, thank God, that I was just aware enough, present enough to see what is this triggering. And I found that I looked back on my life into a string of much longer term relationships. And I kept tracing it back and tracing it back and tracing it back to these things, these core wounds that we have. So why is this important? What does this matter if we're seeking the transcendent? What does this matter if we're trying to discover who the fuck we are? These are the things that keep us locked into identity without us even knowing. These are the things that kept me congratulating myself on a past experience, on an insight or Kensho, or the point in time where I realized that time had collapsed for me, or I had seen through self. And that was the weirdest thing. I was talking with my friend and teacher about it in complete and total disarray. I don't know if anyone's experienced this. This is probably for folks that have had a first shift a real strong one. And I was really, really confused. How is it that when I'm experiencing this tremendous amount of pain or this fear or this anxiety that's coming up, or this grasping or this holding, or this terror of being abandoned, and then I can't find anybody there? I was like, what the fuck is this? And this is gonna be experienced, hopefully for other folks, it's gonna be experienced in a milder way, but I can tell you what it felt like here. And sometimes it was just in retrospect. So when time had completely collapsed here, what that does is that no matter what it is that I'm doing, it is forever. Grieving, happy, sleeping, enjoying myself, eating. It's like, the eternal cheeseburger I'm having. And there's nothing else but that. Lost in thought. I'm lost in thought for forever. It doesn't really matter what it looks like. So, because there's so much less of a narrative, and then there's no ability to engage any type of antidote or coping mechanism, there's nothing stopping the crazy immediacy of what happens when these feelings come up. And I noticed it sometimes in retrospect. And also kind of almost in the moment, if I even took a second to really pay attention. But usually it's I have to look back, and I was going, well, I was just completely panicked or sobbing or afraid or feeling abandoned, and there was nobody there for it, which is the exact opposite, the inverse of what we hear when we have non-dual commentators or critics talking about, let me use that as an avoidance for these things. But when it actually happens and you're not waving it around like a fucking banner that nobody's there, when nobody's there, the entire universe for me was despair, or was sadness, or was joy, or was relief, or was anything. Because there's no longer any ability to push away, to cope, to engage decades old patterns and systems. So you're left so fucking raw. And the floodgates open here. I think in the last 3 or 4 months, I have cried more than cumulatively all the rest of this process and the rest of my life combined. And I'm a crier. I enjoy it. It's very relieving. So I got back into the core wounds, and I got into the psychology, and I got into understanding relationship dynamics, and I understood that my family, my sense of safety was never there, that I was betrayed by my caregivers, that love was inconsistent, that when I was punished, this is my approval from my parents, primarily my mother, and this is her love. That when she withdrew her approval, she withdrew her love as well. Whereas in reality, it needed to be like this, where I can say, I'm not co-signing on your actions. And then I was banished. I was punished. And the way I was punished was to be isolated. I was sent away. I was sent to my room. I was denied things. Things were taken away. I lost all kinds of things, had my room cleared out, and all sorts of other horrible things that I won't get into here. And then I learned to self-soothe. And I learned that everybody leaves. Everybody leaves. And I carry that into the rest of my life. So I grabbed on to teachers. I grabbed on to validation. I learned that in order to keep anyone around, I had to do the bigger and better thing. I had to perform. I had to do the circus tricks and the backflips to prove my worth. This sounds a lot more like trauma therapy that I'm talking about, but I really need to say that from here, that these are the identity structures that keep us trapped. And there is no fucking way that staying in the absolute is the end of the game. It's coming back into this. So I've spent countless hours writing, journaling. And when I journal, I don't really write a bunch of venting. It's very precise. It's very deliberate. I start out pretty high up in the chain of what happened, and then I move down into the fear, and then at some point I'm going to get into that core feeling. And when I get into that, that's where the tears come, and that's where the release is. And then having to see all the subtle signals as this whole last few months has unfolded, that it was required of me to regulate my nervous system, to tell little Teddy that he was okay, to really begin to scan my environment. First of all, for safety. For us trauma folks, we're always scanning for safety. I'm on high alert, or have been on high alert. I understand threat assessment. I can pick up any nuance in a room that doesn't feel right because I was in violent environments. And now it's been this constant rewiring of the nervous system, because I found that I'm the anxious attachment model. Lucky me. What's really clear here is that everything that I was looking for is on the other side of this. That there's a growing sense of stability. There's a growing sense of peace, and that has nothing to do with my circumstantial life. It has nothing to do with the solidity of my environment. Everything we want is just on the other side of this. And no white knuckling, no amount of meditation, no amount of any of the practices are going to substitute the willingness to just be here. And fear is powerful, right? Fear is so fucking powerful. But I said that prayer in that prison cell, and it grabbed me, and it got me. As I was talking to my teacher about it, she says, yeah, once you've seen through self, you're defenseless. You're defenseless. And I don't mean that to scare anybody. It's actually, it's not as horrible as it may sound. It's just when those moments when you're really, really lit up, that it can be really intense. And yet there's an undercurrent too, that this is what I'm supposed to be. Okay, sure, why not? Eventually you give up. Eventually you find out that the resistance 10 or 15 minutes before you burst into tears is the worst possible feeling ever. And then you cry. And it feels so good. I don't know if anybody's been too drunk before, but the 10 minutes before you throw up and your world is death and doom and spinning and horrible. And then and then as soon as you get sick, you're like, oh God, that feels so much better. That's what this feels like. And she said, you have all these rooms that you still have to explore, self or not. And these rooms are of our emotional content, stored emotional content, whether they be memories or an energetic thing, trauma, 2 hours of crying in this room, an hour of anger in this room. You still have to feel through all of them. And yet, somehow or another, a whole bunch of us on this path, and even teachers, some, I suppose, have some of these areas under lock and key. That's okay. I mean, they're speaking about the absolute. Everyone gets to be met at the level and teach at the level that they're at. There's absolutely nothing wrong with all that. I noticed that I would watch and see, and I would go, yeah, there's still something guarded there, And for those of us that are all the way in on this, I don't mean that to sound any better or special or anything stupid like that, that are just leaning into the emotional landscape of this. We can sense it. We can fucking sense it, right? So I'm going to continue to try to document this in a little bit more cohesive of a way. The last 3 videos have just been kind of this, almost blowing off steam, just sharing so that other folks can see that this is okay. I haven't burst into flames. I don't regret anything that I'm experiencing right now. There are whole vast days, hours, moments where my entire existence says yes. And that is not connected to whether I'm upset, crying, in resistance. There's just a knowing, okay. There's a trust, and there continues to be a greater and deeper trust. So I'm well into this learning to re-regulate my nervous system, to lean into these patterns. But in the beginning, I know it can be so challenging. Fear causes paralysis. It causes paralysis, amnesia, and blindness. We don't even know it. Don't even know it. It's the weirdest thing. The nervous system is wired to do that. What is it? Fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And it's so automatic that you're either completely unaware of it, or that just seems the thing to do at the time. So I needed to break out of those patterns. I needed to reclaim, as corny as it sounds, especially in sort of an awakening setting, I needed to reclaim my own power. My own power is not something grand, or I'm a wizard waving a stick, or I have a magic spell. It's just a quiet standing on my own 2 feet, standing in whatever it is and going, okay, I'm willing to feel this too. I'm willing to feel this too. You do this enough times and it becomes really easy. And the speed at which I move through things is what took me 6 months to even show up on my radar, can take a day to move through. That doesn't mean that day isn't very intense, but it's just there's no resistance. There's no ability to resist. So the feelings show up and you just kind of go, you let it just completely blast you, because you know what's on the other side of it. You also know that the resistance to it is static. The resistance to those feelings, you know where that goes. It's a dead end. You've experienced it. I had experienced it so many times where I'm like, I know where this leads. It's going to feel stale and stagnant and just mucky and grimy and sort of like, I don't know, I'll spare you the grosser definitions, but I could get into some pretty funky ones. It's just going to feel like it's festering. Whereas reaching into it and then having that really good solid release, whatever that looks like. For me, it's a really, really good cry. Afterwards, you feel lighter. You understand that you've cleared out your emotional load that much more. The analogy came to me that this whole thing that we're doing is it's about coming home. This whole awakening process, this whole journey is about coming right back here. And I've landed there any number of times where it felt like home, where it was a transcendent experience, or it was a mystical experience, or it was a shift in identity, or it was an awakening, or it was a this, or it was a that, or it was a whatever the fuck. And then watched it go, watched it leave. I watched it stay an hour, a day, a week, and wonder why. It's because it couldn't settle. Because when coming home, I wanted to come home and rest. And all I found was a bed of rotten nails. And it's not comfortable to lay and rest on that. And those rotten nails are the unfelt things, the unseen patterns, the way the body is wired, the stored emotions, the unaddressed traumas. So it's slowly clearing a space for myself to lay down, to rest, because this is home, right here. There's nowhere else we can go. Doesn't matter what we do. And the irony of it is that while we're sitting there resisting fear, resisting anger, resisting shame, resisting all of that, you're so fucking uncomfortable in that moment. You're already experiencing it. So just remove the resistance. Take a conscious moment to see it for what it is. And to the best of your ability, feel into it. You can do it in micro doses. It doesn't have to be the whole thing at once. Stay in that feeling for another 10 seconds. You can do something kind for yourself for an extra minute or two. So many different ways to do it. But when we're in fear and we're stuck in trauma, we tend to deal in absolutes. We tend to deal in black and white. It's either the whole thing or nothing. And there's no sense of a middle ground. We have to start negotiating. We negotiate with ourselves. We create and we look for a whole different landscape of how this can be done. There's infinite middle grounds to do this and then take a break, or do that and then stop, or try this for 5 minutes and then take a break. You don't have to go running headlong into a wall of fucking spikes. Who does that? That's just dumb. You can look at one and walk up to it and go, beer, beer, beer. Oh, it's pretty sharp. All right. And then maybe try to unscrew it or something. Don't go at a dead run. So thanks to everybody that responded on the last video. I was very touched and very moved by the huge response. I will continue to make these as they show up. And as this settles and moves into something, perhaps I'll be able to present this in something of a bit more digestible model. Who knows, rather than just kind of rambling and holding back tears on every other video. So, yeah, thanks everyone. I'm deeply grateful you're here. I'm very grateful you're here, and sending tons of love and blessings.